What's going on, everybody? This is Tempest, and we are 2 weeks away from the beginning of the NA-LCS Spring 2018 split. And I was getting pretty hype. It feels like the roster announcements were eons ago, and I was getting pumped up, and I kind of forgot about it, but now I'm back and I'm pumped up again, and I'm here today to talk to you about the team that, after looking at all the rosters, I think I've made a decision. This is the team that I'm definitely going to follow the closest. I'm going to try to cover it all, but even though it's back down to best of ones, I can't guarantee I'm going to be able to watch every game. So it's good to have some focus. I'm probably going to stick with the teams that I think are either interesting or good or competitive. And I'm just going to come out there and say it right now. I think there's one that's definitely sitting at the top of my list, and that is Team Liquid. Now, Team Liquid completely retooled their roster. If you haven't been paying attention at all in the scene, they have basically an NA super team of sorts that they've amalgamated from team members from previous teams such as TSM and Immortals and Cloud9. All big names. All three of those teams went to Worlds last year, so everyone in this team has had Worlds experience recently. And I'm gonna run it down from top to support and basically outline, because pretty much all these players have had quite a storied history in the LCS and other places. So I'm gonna run it down and give you my reasons why I think this team is definitely one to look out for, and why I am more excited about this team, whether they're good or bad, than any other team. All right, so starting in the top lane, we have Impact. Now, Impact started his career on SK Telecom, believe it or not. Season 3, Season 4, he was on the team in Season 3 when they won Worlds, so he's a former world champion. He's known for his consistent tank play, which has pretty much been the staple of his play style throughout his entire history. But after his 2 years or so in Korea, he did come to the NALCS, where he's been ever since. Season 5, both splits, he was on a team called Team Impulse, and that was kind of a crazy team because they had 2 Korean speakers, including Impact. They had a Chinese speaker, and they had 2 NA residents. So it was a total mixed bag. Their mid laner was Zhao Zhao. He was considered an NA resident at the time, so they could import 2 players. So they got Rush, the Korean solo queue god jungler, and then they got Impact. And that team was considered a top team in the region. I think they generally did pretty well in playoffs. I think they finished 4th both splits, maybe like 3rd or 4th. But they did not make it to Worlds, and after that, the team pretty much disbanded. And then after a brief stint on a team called NRG, which I don't have too much to say about because I didn't really watch too much of them, Impact, which if you've been watching League recently, you would know Impact for his time on Cloud9, where he was there for 3 splits, basically summer of 2016 to summer of 2017. And he sort of had a resurgence in his play in summer 2016. Still playing tanks, but he's beast moding people with Gnar and shit. Throwing people into walls, not giving a fuck. So yeah, overall, I'd say he's basically your solid rock in the top lane. Is he the best top laner in North America? No. Is he one of the best? Probably. Does he have a pretty solid play style? I'd say so. Through his ups and downs, I'm excited that Impact is on Team Liquid. Now, let's move to the jungle. Their jungler of Team Liquid is Xmithie. And I first watched Xmithie when he was on a team called Team Vulcan back in Season 3. And probably the best mid laner at the time was this guy named ManCloud, who was also on Vulcan. And he and Xmithie were sort of like the dynamic duo. Like Xmithie would always, make sure ManCloud get rolling, because that was pretty much their win condition, is they would win through him. So that's how I grew to know Xmithie at first. Later in Season 5, he moved to CLG, where he was the jungler for I think it was like probably 2 years or so. He was on CLG for a while, and he kind of came back in as this more cerebral jungler. He was smart enough to know, to read the information, kind of work with Aphromoo. He would know which lane, if the lanes needed help, he would kind of know where he needed to go and what he needed to do. And then in the most recent split, he transferred to Immortals, where he sort of helped. I mean, he was definitely one of the reasons why that team sort of got rejuvenated, and I think he was seen as sort of a leader figure in that team on Immortals, and helped them carry them to the finals of LCS and then to Worlds. So that's Xmithy. Then in the mid lane, you've got POB, the old Pobelter. Pobelter, see, I didn't really watch too much before like LCS era, because Pobelter is really young. So he played in some good teams before the LCS, but when the LCS first came out, he actually was too young to participate. So he didn't start until Season 4. He was on Evil Geniuses, which was a pretty garbage team, if you ask me. And then he got pretty much, rescued out of there. And he was on CLG for one split in Season 5 Summer, which was the split that they beat TSM. And CLG actually won the LCS for the first time ever. And I'd say Pobelter for a while just kind of seemed like a mediocre player, but he's definitely very consistent. Although in that final against TSM, I vividly remember watching that because at the time I was definitely rooting against TSM back then, and Pobelter in that series definitely had a hand in it. But overall, he's a pretty consistent player. He's not going to lose you the game. He's sometimes going to win you the game, and I think he's a pretty good foundation to build around on Team Liquid. And then we have probably the most interesting character on this roster. We have Team Liquid Doublelift. Yeah, I never thought you'd hear that, although he was on Team Liquid for a brief stint, but you would know Doublelift from his time on CLG, and then, somewhat controversially at first, his time on TSM. His time on CLG was pretty rough up until they won that summer split in 2015. They seemed to be a team that always seemed promising in the regular season and then kind of busted out in the playoffs, losing to opponents that they probably should have done better against. CLG in particular was notorious for the Protect the Doublelift comp, where they pretty much put all their eggs in his basket, and they would basically win the game or throw the game or lose the game based around him. But as time went on, he definitely did become what I would consider, I'd say he was probably the best ADC in Northern America in 2016 and 2017. I'm just going to go ahead and say that for now. I can't think of a better ADC. And so on TSM, he really blossomed maybe and became a more complete player, but still didn't have the international success that he wanted, because TSM, as we all know, does not make it out of groups in a long, long time. But yeah, Doublelift, definitely he used to be known as a hot-headed player, a controversial figure. He's definitely very interesting. He's all about the trash talk. I love it. I used to not like Doublelift, and then I realized that I was taking him too seriously. I think he doesn't take himself seriously all the time with the things that he says. I think he realizes that he's trolling, and definitely now. So I think there's going to be a lot of shit talk going on with this team. So that's definitely going to be interesting. And then the support player is Ole, who, another interesting. So quick recap. I think I mentioned this on my complete NA roster rundown, but a lot of these players have played together before. The 2015 CLG summer roster had Pobelter, Doublelift, and Xmithy, and then last split's Immortals roster had Pobelter, Xmithy, and Ole on it. So it's sort of it's almost like a bunch of these former lineups that did pretty well coming together to form this super amalgamation. But Ole pretty much came over from, I think he came over, so he's Korean, but he played in Brazil, he played in Taiwan, and then at the beginning of season 7, he came over to join Immortals. They had a lackluster first split when Dardoch was their jungler. Then Xmithie comes in, they get Xmithie, they get a new coach, and things look a lot better. I'd say Olay is definitely a playmaker in the lane, which I think will be an interesting duo with Doublelift. I'm really looking forward to see how that turns out, because they seem like they both want to win lane and want to be really aggressive. The only maybe downside of Olay is sometimes he's too aggressive, which is also definitely a downside of Doublelift. But it could be really good, it could be really bad. We'll just have to wait and see. Don't have too much to say on Olay because he hasn't been in the LCS that long, and I haven't seen him play as much as some of the other guys. But, not to rehash my previous video, but the way I see this team working is through the bot lane. I think you've got two aggressive laners, and I think Pobelter and Impact are a little more passive, so you kind of let them do their own thing and you focus on bot. We'll have to see. We still got 2 weeks to go. I'm pretty excited, as I said previously. The kicker of the NALCS split is a game between TSM and Team Liquid. They obviously did that on purpose because that's the matchup everyone wants to see. TSM's almost like a super team too, with the G2 bot lane in there. So we'll have to see what happens, but I hope that was a good breakdown of the Team Liquid roster, and I will see you guys at the freaking LCS. Later.
Hit me. Shit. Right in the sternum this time, T-baby. Shit, you already know. You already know. You already know. Damn. This that hustler music, young Weezy got that motherfucking hustler music. So ride to it, y'all, vibe to it, y'all. Damn. Goddamn, next they hit a nigga in his head with this one. I'ma paint the city.